Marion Hugh Knight Jr., better known as Suge Knight, was born in Compton, California on April 19, 1965. His father, who was also a singer, gave him the nickname Suge, which means sugar bear. Like his father, the young Knight was a talented football player who earned an athletic scholarship to the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, where he excelled academically. Knight briefly played defensive line for the Los Angeles Rams before working as a bodyguard and breaking into the music industry, with one of his clients being singer Bobby Brown. By the late 1980s, he had established his own publishing company and had songs used by Vanilla Ice for his hit To the Extreme album, with the rapper later signing over royalties to Knight in a balcony meeting. Knight eventually co-founded Death Row Records with rapper and producer Dr. Dre, who released his best-selling album The Chronic in 1992 through Time Warner's Interscope imprint. Death Row became a major force in the establishment of West Coast hip-hop on the charts in 1990s, with additional blockbusters like Snoop Dogg's 1993 debut album and the 1994 Above the Rim soundtrack. Knight was sentenced to prison for violating parole on the night Tupac Shakur was killed. With the label's involvement in a number of controversies, Knight later faced financial difficulties and was sentenced to more time in prison. Today, we are taking a look at the criminal history of Suge Knight, the man who once ran the studio in the streets of the West Coast. We are going to look at the past crime records in a detailed timeline, so stay till the end of the video to find out the shocking truths from Suge Knight's career. 1986. Knight was a talented college football player before he became famous for allegedly hanging Vanilla Ice from a balcony. He received a football scholarship out of high school in 1983, and he transferred to UNLV in 1985 to continue his career, winning Rookie of the Year in the process. But it wasn't until his senior year that he began to show signs of the criminal mindset that would come to define his life. Knight's college years are defined by a drug-dealing side gig in the novel Labyrinth. 1987. This is the start of the lengthy rap sheet. Suge's future wife, Sharitha Golden, filed a restraining order against him in October. Knight broke the order by grabbing Golden's ponytail and cutting it off, which led to his first arrest. Suge was arrested again just 2 weeks later, this time for shooting a man in the leg and wrist while attempting to steal his Nissan Maxima. Knight's illustrious football career aided him in getting out of trouble, and his charges were miraculously reduced to misdemeanors, with a $1,000 fine and 3 years of probation. That's right, you heard me correctly. He shot a man twice and stole his car and only received a $1,000 fine in exchange. In 2007, he told the Washington Post, "It went to a misdemeanor. With his own gun, I shot him." 1990. The soon-to-be Death Row record executive had a busy 1990. Suge uses a loaded pistol to break some poor guy's jaw in Las Vegas, earning him another $9,000 slap on the wrist and a 2-year suspended sentence. He's also admitted to 2 counts of battery, 1 each in Hollywood and Beverly Hills, as well as a charge of disturbing the peace in Van Nuys. What is the outcome of these charges? Even more probation. 1991. Suge Knight was given another suspended sentence, this time for giving a false name when he was caught with a deadly weapon in Beverly Hills, a tactic that included strong-arming away Dr. Dre and DOC's contracts from Eazy-E. Vanilla Ice was also allegedly hung from a balcony by Suge during this time, but this never happened. Instead, Ice and Suge's side went to court over the royalties for Ice Ice Baby. Suge, on the other hand, is likely to show him the edge of the infamous balcony. 1992. Suge would have won gold in 1992 if convictions and arrests were an Olympic sport. He was convicted of carrying a concealed weapon in West Covina, convicted of disturbing the peace in Van Nuys, and he beat and shot 2 budding rap artists for using the Death Row office phones without permission, all of which resulted in suspended sentences. Suge was arrested for armed assault as a result of that incident. The 2 rappers, George and Linwood Stanley, went on to say that the shady dealings with the prosecutor, his daughter was supposed to be on the Death Row Records release, resulted in the Stanley brothers accepting the plea deal and Suge getting off the hook. Suge, Dr. Dre, and the DOC were also arrested in New Orleans in 1992 following the stabbing of 2 people. There is some speculation about the circumstances, with some claiming that it occurred at a radio convention or at the premiere of the film Mo Money. People were stabbed in either case, and Suge was somehow involved. This isn't surprising. 1993. Suge was named in a drug trafficking ring that moved cocaine from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. He was sentenced to more probation. The notoriety that grew out of Knight's ability to avoid prosecution for violent incidents, almost all of which have been related to death row business dealings, served only to bolster the Death Row Records image of invincibility. Jack Brown wrote in Suge Knight's The Rise, Fall, and Rise of Death Row Records. 1995, Suge was back on the criminal map after a relative quiet 1994, this time for an incident at the Death Row Records party at the El Rey Theater where a man named Kelly Jamerson was stomped to death. He'd been beaten so badly that he couldn't be recognized. Suge Knight was said to be involved. A family member told the Los Angeles Times, "There were so many people stomping and hitting him that no one would have helped him. You had to look at him really closely to realize it was Kelly. We knew what he was wearing." Suge was charged with conspiracy to illegally possessing a firearm in January 1995. There were no arrests in the Jamerson murder, and the possession charge carried no jail time. 1996. Suge and Tupac Shakur are caught on camera beating Orlando Anderson at the MGM Grand Hotel in Las Vegas on September 7, 1996. Anderson was a Crips member who was allegedly responsible for the previous beating of a Suge Knight and Tupac associate. Tupac was shot and killed in front of Suge later that night. The crime has never been solved. Suge has been loosely linked to the murders of Tupac and the Notorious B.I.G. since their deaths, but no concrete evidence has ever been presented to a judge. 1997. Knight was sentenced to 9 years in prison, but only served 5 because of his previous arrest and footage from the night Tupac was murdered showing Suge violating his probation with the beatdown. 2001 through 2002. Before I came in, I hung out at all the clubs, spent a lot of time on the streets, Suge told Newsweek after his release. That will change when I return home. I'll take care of my business and get it back on track. The freedom was short-lived. Knight was arrested again in December 2002 for violating the terms of his release. Authorities discovered Knight with several gang members when they stormed the new offices of the Death Row Records. A murder investigation led them there, but Knight was not implicated. His parole specifically prohibited him from associating with seedy characters. He was in prison for 61 days. 2003. When his car was blocked in at the White Lotus nightclub in June, Knight assaulted a parking lot attendant. Remember how he said in Newsweek that he doesn't go out to nightclubs? Yeah, Suge was sentenced to 10 months in prison for violating his parole for the second time. 2005. Suge was put over in his car in February for making an illegal U-turn. He was then arrested after a search turned up marijuana. Suge spent a week in jail before being found not guilty of the possession charges. 2008. Knight was arrested for drug and assault violations outside of a Las Vegas strip club. Melissa Isaac, his girlfriend, was allegedly beaten up by him. Because Isaac failed to appear in court to testify, the charges against him were dropped. 2015. Suge ran over a man while visiting a filming location, killing him and injuring another in 2015. At the time, he claimed he was fleeing an attack and turned himself in. Knight was sentenced to 28 years in prison by a Los Angeles judge for a fatal hit and run, effectively ending one of hip-hop's most successful careers. Surveillance cameras captured the fatal confrontation at Tam's Burgers on January 29, 2015, showing Knight back up his pickup truck over Cleabone Sloan before plowing into Terry Carter, 55, a longtime businessman who would build custom lowriders. Knight then drove away, leaving Carter to succumb to his injuries. Sloan was a consultant on the NWA biopic Straight Outta Compton and is a longtime Compton resident. Jessica Carter, the victim's sister, read a letter from Carter's widow, Lillian, to the court. When she typed her husband's name into an internet search engine, she discovered nothing about his role as a community leader or businessman, she told the judge. The widow's letter stated, "What you do see is the defendant killing my husband. He was so much more than a man who was killed by the defendant's truck. He's my husband, best friend, and breadwinner." During Knight's various court appearances, Carter said she was heartbroken to see him smiling and waving at loved ones. According to the widow, "I will never see Terry smile at me again." On January 29, 2015, all interactions with Terry came to an end. We only have memories. Prosecutors dismissed the murder charges against Knight, 53, as well as separate criminal cases accusing him of robbery and making criminal threats as a part of the agreement. Knight agreed to serve 22 years in prison for voluntary manslaughter, with the additional 6 years added because of the U.S. three strikes law relating to repeating violations, in exchange for admitting to using a deadly and dangerous weapon when he ran down 2 men with his vehicle. According to prosecutors, if Knight had been found guilty of murder as originally charged, he would have faced life in prison. Outside of the music industry, Knight ran a car hydraulics company and opened a Vegas nightclub, 662. He was also known for his charitable contributions to local California communities. Death Row was the subject of much speculation and controversy, with police investigations into the label's involvement in racketeering, gang and drug related activities, as Knight has been previously sentenced to probation on charges of weapons possession, assault, and attempted murder, as well as allegations that he used intimidation to secure deals. The violent and misogynistic content of much of the label's song content drew widespread condemnation, including from C. Dolores Tucker, the president of the National Political Congress of Black Women. Marion Suge Knight was reportedly taken to the Los Angeles hospital from the Los Angeles County Jail, where he is currently serving a prison sentence. The reason for Knight's hospitalization is unknown, but the music mogul has previously been hospitalized for a variety of health issues. Knight was rushed to the hospital in May 2017 to be treated for blood clots, a condition he's been battling for 2 years. Knight also had an emergency appendix surgery in 2015 and collapsed in the middle of a court hearing, according to reports. Well, that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and comment below. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell if you're new to the channel and you want to be notified when we upload more content.